Thanks for joining us again at Nomad PDU. Today I want to talk about using the Nomad V5, which is this one over here. That's the NMC 12.6 volt, been around for about 5 years or so. And a lot of people want to upgrade to the V6HD or the V5.5. So the V5.5, we've seen this one here, that's the latest, and that's 100 amp hour Lifepo4 prismatic battery. Does come standard with Bluetooth. But let's look at the V6HD over here, which I've got set up, and that has the capacity to run up to 1500 watt inverter or 1344 watt. So that one there is the big brother, and that's 105 amp hour. So this guy here is 14.6 volt profile. So what you would be doing is you want to use your V5 and consistently continue to use it, and that's fine, you can do, is when you have a voltage sensitive accessory like a fridge, it maybe doesn't like running down to 11 volt, for an example. Obviously the Lifepo4s will run through the cycle at a total of 12.8, that's nominal voltage, so it'll stay in that right through the whole cycle. So your fridge will run that dead flat and it won't know the difference. But with the V5, it runs down like a fuel gauge and it runs down to 9 volts, so you keep running down, your fridge might cut out. But what you can do is, if you're going to be doing a setup like this, you may have seen it before, you can use a 200 amp hour, 135 amp hour, so you're basically looking at supporting the V5 by keeping it fully charged. And how do you do that? So with the V5, you've got a charge profile of 12.6. You would have seen these, which are a Siga DC or an Anderson DC voltage stabilizer. And quite simply, all it does, it takes a voltage in between a range, and this one's 9 to 36 volt, very typical range, converts to a stabilized whatever voltage you want. So in this case, it's going to put out 12.6 constant, and this is a 10 amp module. You can get these that will put out 14.6, and it's either a step up or step down. In this case here, what I'm going to do is, because I want to be able to use my V6HD at the same time as my V5, is what I'll do is I'll just use the Siga socket from the V6 or the V5.5, and that way I've got my Anderson outputs free, and I've still got another Siga, and I've got my fast USB there, and I've also got a charge there for my obviously DC or my AC/DC. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm going to plug this into the V5. You notice that's just gone up, and now what's happening is the V6 is charging the V5, and it's telling me it's putting in at the moment 10.8 amp. So it's charging that at 10.8 amp. And what I would do is, if I've got this set up in the vehicle, is I've got my proper DC in the vehicle. This one's a 20 amp with a solar input, and then I'd be charging the V6 or the V5.5, the L series, or any of the prismatics that we have, Lifepo4, should be charging that. So quite simply, you've got to remember, when that's full, it's not going to just keep on drawing. So when it's full, it's full. And what will happen is this will top that up, and then this gets topped up by the vehicle. So when this is full, that's just still going to be going across here. The great thing about that is, you see here it's 12.3 volt. That's going to go up to 12.6 regardless, because it's continuing to charge. You could run your fridge off that, no problems, and all the fridge is going to keep seeing is 12.6, because that's going to stay full. Alternatively, you plug your fridge into your V6HD or your V5.5, and it's just going to see 12.8 volt. But if you want to use both systems at the same time, that's how you can do it. And then that's going to stay at 12.6 once it's full, or where it is now, and I put it on at 12.1, it's getting up to 12.4 now. That's going to quite happily charge. And then I'm charging this profile at 14.6. So that's basically a step down. So that's taking 14.6 and converting it to 12.6. Now what if I did here, is I can plug that Siga plug, which is what a lot of people have at the moment with their V5s, the Siga DC, and that would go into the vehicle, and the vehicle's going to charge it, again from the Siga socket. It's going to take 9 to 36 volt when your car's running, convert it to 12.6, and that charges your Nomad V5. So again, I'm just treating that like another Siga point, and that's basically like your car. So that's basically where you're charging from, and you're charging to. So you will get these configurations like this that will have 9 to 36 volt and 14.6. So we do a 5 amp one of these, which has a 14.6 profile. So you can plug that into the V6 or the V5.5, and you can be charging that from your car at 5 amp 14.6. But what I will point out is that we talked about taxing before, and also conversion cost, is that when you're converting to 14.6 from the vehicle, and it's a 5 amp, it's not going to draw 5 amp, it's going to draw about 7 amp, because it's stepping up now. So you've got to remember, step up, step down. That all it means is, what am I taking in, and am I converting up or down? So with these ones here, you can get those DC units that will convert from 9 to 36 volt to 24 volt, and they'll step them up to 24 volt. But you've got to remember that if it's going to step up to 24 volt from 12 volt, it's going to tax it quite a bit. So we would use, say, a 20 amp module, but we'd use an Anderson connection. I wouldn't run a 20 amp step up on a 24 volts to a 24 volt system using a SIGA socket. So you're pretty much maxed out at 5 and 10 amp, and it depends on the socket and the rating. So we'd be using Andersons if we were going to step up to 20 amp. So we have to 15 amp, 20 amp. Again, you can just look at them and step up, step down. If you're going to Google it, it's just basically a DC voltage stabilizer or a step up or step down, and that's all it does. Voltage in converts to voltage out and amperage out. That's all it does. So if you've got a V5 and you want to upgrade to V6 HD 200 amp hour to give yourself more capacity in the field, because you can have your friends running a fridge off that, you can be running a wire lead out of here and run 2 fridges out of this one. And if you've got the V5.5, again, that's 100 amp hour. You can run 2 fridges at the same time. You can run a wire lead out of one and run 2 fridges. You can run an inverter out of this one. Okay, like we spoke about before, this one up to probably 600 watt inverter because it's a 50 amp rated Anderson. So you can get more out of your V5. There's no point just putting it away and letting it just, letting it die after 4 or 5 years. It's still got plenty of life left in it. And when it does eventually just die, okay, then you've still got your V6 or your L series or your HD's V5.5, but you still may as well get as much out of the V5 as you can, and don't just put it away and forget about it, because it's still a great unit. And you must remember that if you're going to do this, you've still got all the sockets. You can use both the units at the same time. Just got to remember that the V5 has a maximum output of 25 amp, and then your V6 HD has a maximum 100 amp output. V5.5, that's 100 amp max output as well, but it has a max of 50 from the Andersons because obviously they're rated at 50 amp. So you can use all these sockets, including USBs, etc. So you've got a massive amount of options for running a huge campsite with multiple accessories all over the place, including inverters if you require, with the HDs, and then you might be running 4 or 5 fridges, and you have the capacity to do that with a setup like this without any problem at all. And again, they don't take up much space. The V6 HD 68mm thick. You go to V5.5, they're 110mm thick, so a little bit thicker than the V5, but we had to do that because of the capacity of the battery. So that's if you want to run a V5 and a V6 HD or Lifepo4 Prismatics, V5.5 L series 135 or 200 amp hour. So any Lifepo4 chemistry, and you still want to use the V5, you can set it like that, and you can connect it to this and still keep your major Andersons free, and charge it up, and then run whatever you like off it at the same time as you're running the vehicle. The cool thing about the DC-DC, if you set it up like this properly, is you've got that unit sitting in the car, and if you've got your V5 in the vehicle as well, you can simply unclip it and pull it out, and then just use it on the beach for half a day, whatever, run your fridges, etc., and then put it back in, clip it back to your V6 or your Prismatic, and that's going to start charging it again. Well, that's been charging off solar or whatever else you got, or you can have that on solar. So look, as long as you just take your time doing it, it's very easy to do, but that gives you the capacity, flexibility to be able to remove and use that on a daily basis, plug it back in the vehicle and use that. But again, these are only 14 or so kilos, both the 105 and the 100 V5.5, they're around about the 14 kilo mark. So it's still manageable, but that's if you wanted to set it up for a more complex dual battery setup, flexibility, we have the portability as well. So we'll get into questions about how can we use both together, and that's why we thought we'd cover that. So yes, you can use the V5 with the V6. You just got to remember that the two chemistries, you just want to step up or step down. 14.6 is your Prismatic Lifepo4, NMC is 12.6 profile, so you just want to either step it down to that or you step it up to 12.6. Again, if you're using the V5 only, you can use this as a step up, you can use this to run to the fridge. So if that says 12.1 at the moment, and I must plug this in here, and then I want to take the other end and plug it into my fridge, the fridge is only going to see 12.6 regardless of what it says up here until the battery's flat. So that's stepping it up, so that could be 10 volt, and this is still going to be putting out 12.6 to the fridge, and the fridge will only see that, and then that will run flat. So these have been around for ages, and most people that have a fridge and a Nomad V5 will be having one of these, which is step up, or they have their Nomad always topped up because they've got a large solar bank, or they're on DC from the vehicle quite a lot, so they've got their own DC and running it to the car from the car, and they're keeping it topped up. So that's called a step up. Could be called a step down. Just remember what you're bringing in to putting it out. Is it stepping it up or is it stepping it down? And that's what you've got to remember. It's not that complex and confusing. It's just that it's DC voltage stabilizer or a DC charge. You can refer to it whatever you like. So thanks for joining us again. If you've got questions on that setup, contact at nomadpdu.com.au. If you're at the Melbourne show or the Sydney show that's coming up, we'll have this set up. We'll be able to explain it to you in more detail. If you want to come in and you're still confused, come in, have a chat to us. And we'll be able to help you out. Once we run through it a few times, it's not that difficult. It's very, very simple. So thanks for joining us again at Nomad PDU, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.